Good afternoon and welcome to Midday Live from the News Hub here at Adesawe Kanda. My name is Efwa Teku. We are live on DSTV channel 279 and all our social media platforms are also active. That's Instagram, Twitter and Facebook at TV3 Ghana. Now let's look at our top stories. Asantehene pays historic visit to Ochimai. Former President Mahama announces his comeback as he joins NDC presidential race. And war veterans in Zimbabwe demand main international airport remove Robert Mugabe from its name. These and more do we have for you in the next 1 hour. Do stay with us. Now, Asantehene Otumfuo Osei-Tutu II has arrived in a historic visit to Chebi as a guest of honor at a Deba being hosted by Ochihene Osajefo Amwetia of Oripei to climax the 75th anniversary of the late king of Acheme-Boakwa traditional area, Nanase Oforiata. The seeming traditional rivalry between the two traditional rulers, which dates back to history, was broken a few months ago when the Ochihene Osajefo Amwetia of Oripei stormed the Royal Golf Tourney, which was under the auspices of the Asantehene as the guest of honor. The 75th anniversary of Nanase Oforiata's life, organized by his children, grandchildren, and great-grandchildren on the theme Relaunch of Acheme-Boakwa 1700 to 1943 from Oforipei to Se Oforiata, is aimed at highlighting the late king's major achievements in honor of his memory. Our correspondent Nana Kwekwedia joins us live from Chebi. Good afternoon to you, Nana. Can you confirm if Otumfuo and the president have both arrived at Chebi, and what kind of reception was given them?
Yeah, I can confirm Otumfuo is in Chebi as I speak to you now, but is yet to arrive at the Deba ground. So is the president. The president is yet to arrive from Accra. But I can confirm that Otumfuo is in Chebi, and very shortly we'll be at the Deba ground. We are expecting to see Ochihene as well here. He will be welcoming all the guests here. What I can tell you is that most of the chiefs around the country, almost everyone, either they are here themselves or they send representatives here, ministers of state, and parliamentary members, MPs are also here, and other dignitaries. The diplomatic corps actually is also here. So everyone invited has arrived. We are just waiting for the Otumfuo himself, the Ochihene, and then the president to arrive here. The atmosphere, though, is that of a culture and tradition at its best. And we have our colleagues, some colleagues as well from the northern sector of the country here, northern region specifically, here as well, showing their cultural prowess here. So it's pomp and pageantry here, exhibition of tradition and culture together to celebrate one great man, the Oforiata of blessed memory, who, according to the people here, or according to history, has helped in terms of education, both in Chebi and also influencing governance in terms of education. So that's what we are celebrating here. Everybody is here to see exactly what will happen.
And how involved are the people of Chebi in terms of their excitement about this occasion?
They are all involved. Everybody here is involved. The people of Chebi are so excited about today. They believe the entire country has descended into the community. So everybody's excited, even children, everybody. I mean, you see people smiling all over, people welcoming. When you go to, we try to pass by some of the joints, I mean, to get some food to eat, and they were all welcoming us here, excited that everybody is here and to celebrate Nana Oforiata of blessed memory.
Thank you very much, Nana Kwekwedia, and we will be coming to you in our subsequent bulletins for more details. You're watching Midday Live on TV3. And do remember that you can also go to our social media platforms, that's Instagram, Twitter, and Facebook at TV3 Ghana. Now, Asantehene Otumfuo II has arrived in a historic visit to Chebi, as was earlier stated, as a guest of honor at a deba being hosted by Ochihene Osajifo Amwetia Oforipeyi to climax the 75th anniversary of the late king of Achim Ebuakwa traditional area, Nanase Ofori Atta. Now, the seeming traditional rivalry between the two traditional rulers, which dates back to history, was broken few months ago when the Ochihene Osajifo Amwetia Oforipeyi stormed the Royal Golf Tourney, which was under the auspices of the Asantehene as the guest of honor. The 75th anniversary of Nanase Ofori-Atta's life, organized by his children, grandchildren, and great-grandchildren on the theme relaunch of the Achim Ebuakwa 1700 to 1943 from Oforipeyi to Sir Ofori-Atta, is aimed at highlighting the late king's major achievements in honor of his memory. So these are scenes from Chebi where the occasion is ongoing. That's we have the Otumfuo currently in Chebi for this historic ceremony. He's been invited by the Ochihene to grace this deba. We will bring you more from Chebi as the program goes on. Now, to some other news, former President Rawlings says the recent utterance by national organizer of the NDC, Kofi Adams, in condemning Second Deputy Speaker of Parliament, Alban Bagbin, is inaccurate. The former president made the statement when former President Mahama paid a courtesy call on him at his official residence in Accra.
The meeting between the two former presidents was to afford them the opportunity to deliberate on current happenings within the party and forge ahead as the party prepares to elect new regional and national executives. Former President Mahama also took turns to share and consult President Rawlings on his political future. Other matters discussed centered on re-energizing the grassroots of the party and promoting unity within the rank and file. A statement issued by the office of former President Rawlings raised concerns about recent utterances by the current national organizer of the party, Kofi Adams, against the second Deputy Speaker of Parliament, who is also a presidential aspirant, Alban Sumana Bagbin. Jerry John Rawlings noted it was inaccurate for Kofi Adams to describe Alban Bagbin as someone who was in to destroy the party. He posited that the destruction of the party began especially when the party unduly interfered in the last competitive presidential primary elections in Sunyani by the systemic monetization of the process and postponement of the Congress on two occasions, ostensibly to favor one candidate over others. Former President Rawlings also cautioned against party members issuing statements preventing other presidential aspirants from campaigning in certain locations, as happened in the Shanti region.
We are in competition and Alban Bagbin must give way for fresh ideas. These were the words of Sylvester Mensah, NDC flag-bearer aspirant, in reaction to an earlier comment by the MP for Nadoli West, Alban Bagbin, that he lacked experience to lead the National Democratic Congress. Sylvester Mensah was speaking on our current affairs program, New Day.
We are in competition and I'll grant him that chance to say what he likes and of course, the reality is different. I have been in Parliament just as he has been. Of course, he has been in Parliament longer, which means that he has a very narrow approach to government
for someone who was health minister while you were boss at the NHI, and he says that he attended a lot of conferences with you where your presentations preceded his, and that you are a good guy, but he thinks you should bid your time.
Yeah, I take that as very complimentary, and it is one of the very good reasons why people like him and others must give way to fresh ideas.
But don't you think that, judging by his experience in politics, if he says you're unprepared, you should perhaps listen, take your time, and
I think that this concept of too young, inexperienced is a little outmoded for you and I to even delve into. If at 54, if I were in the public service, I'll be retiring the next 6 years.
Okay.
And I'm still young and I still need mentorship. At least it's laughable.
The former chairman of the electoral management has expressed disappointment at the relationship built between the commission and the media over the years.
Former chairman of the EC, Dr. Kwadwo Eferi-Jan, called on the EC to build partnerships with relevant stakeholders, but noted the media had failed to build effective partnership with the EC in support of electoral democracy.
Let's take the reporting of elections alone. People are reporting about elections and they do not know the difference between a presiding officer and a returning officer. They don't know the difference between a spoiled ballot and an invalid ballot. You see, it gives a wrong impression of what is happening.
In the area of the appointment of the EC chair, he stressed the problem is not who appoints the EC chair, but rather the character of the person who is appointed.
I don't care what method you use. Make sure that the people that you are putting in there are people who can say no to the government if the need arises. There will always be pressures. You know, these politicians, they like to stretch their long tentacles into everything. They do. If you allow them, they will do it. I have not talked about the kinds of pressures and so on that we go through. Yes. All of them. I have fought with them before, but they are my friends and so on and so forth. Yes. You must be able to say no.
NPP campaign manager for the 2016 election, Peter McMenu, called on the EC to adhere to international election laws that Ghana is signed onto in order not to run into problems. He dismissed claims he pre-announced the results of the 2016 election.
What I did is to invite the NDC and their presidential candidate to concede defeat. That is different from announcing election results. No, you can go and replay the tape. It's on YouTube and others. It's on YouTube and others. I invited them based on the results declared at the polling stations and which are posted at the various polling stations. With the 80% of polling stations counted and declared and posted, even if we give them the remaining, the outstanding 20%, they still have lost the election, so they should concede. The law does not say anywhere that you cannot tell your opponent to concede defeat.
Politician and daughter of Ghana's first president, Kwame Nkrumah, Samia Nkrumah, was concerned citizens had failed to keep government accountable. She condemned the indemnity clause in the Constitution, calling for an amendment of the 1992 Constitution.
Now, it means one thing, that we are all in Ghana as citizens, not equal before the law. Now, I'm mentioning this because whatever is in your constitution has a bearing on your psyche, on how you think, on our mindsets, because this is really our final point of reference. It is sacred, but in our case, I believe it is a bit flawed.
Director of Elections of the NDC, Samuel Ofosu Ampofo, condemned the Electoral Commission, saying it is not doing enough to regulate the political ecosystem.
The system of appointment and removal of commissioners has not assuaged anxieties about their independence from the executive. In particular, concerns have been raised over the overwhelming influence of the president in appointment and removal of commissioners. More attention, therefore, needs to be given to securing the operational independence of the Electoral Commission in the performance of their duties.
This year marks the 4th Accra Dialogue, held by the Institute of Law and Public Affairs, Frederick Ebert Stiftung, in partnership with Media General. General Manager of TV3, Beatrice Abbey, assured Media General is resolute in playing a key role in engaging stakeholders on the role of the EC in shaping Ghana's democracy.
I'd like to say that our doors are opened and Media General will partner other institutions and NGOs to help enforce our constitutional mandate, strengthen our state institutions, and shape our policies.
The theme for this year's Accra Dialogue is consolidating Ghana's democratic governance, the role of the Electoral Commission.
You're watching Midday Live on TV3, and information just reaching us is that former President John Dramani Mahama will be contesting the NDC flag bearership position, and we will be bringing you details of that as and when we get that. Now to some more news, the president of the Persons Who Stammer and the executive director, Ghana Blind Union, have asked the Deputy Speaker of Parliament, Alban Bagbin, to apologize and retract his earlier statement about the former Communications and Chieftaincy Minister. They spoke to Stephen Anti on News at 10 last night.
Mr. Bagbin raised concerns about appointing a stammerer to be Minister of Communications. He feels is a bad move.
As an individual or as a person who stammers, I'm very, very disappointed by the comments made by the very respected honorable member of Parliament, and also as an association and the whole stammering community as a whole. Now, these comments are derogatory, they are discriminatory, and these are what we want to avoid in our society. We should apologize to us, first to Dr. Omani, apologize to the stammering community, and then retract his statements.
Alban Bagbin again raised concerns with the appointment of Dr. Dana as Chieftaincy Minister.
It struck me as being very disgraceful because I thought that somebody of his caliber would not make such a statement. How would you say such a thing at this time of our development in this country? Dr. Dana did so well. Nobody complained about the way he was working.
Do you support calls that the Kaleo MP should be thinking about resigning from his position as a member of Parliament?
Oh, I think he should resign because right now he's the Deputy Speaker of Parliament, and that casts a slur on the entire Parliament. I think he should resign, and I think he should give an unqualified apology. That is, if he didn't really mean any mischief.
The Member of Parliament for Yonyo constituency, Joseph Nabu, has defended criticisms on former appointees of the Mahama administration. This follows distasteful comments from flag-bearer aspirant Alban Bagbin, who criticized former President John Mahama for appointing disabled people to head major institutions, which caused the party to lose the 2016 elections. But speaking to 3FM's morning host Winston Amwa, Joseph Nabu said Bagbin's comments are facts and not conjecture.
The appointment of Dr. Omani Boamon, for his stammerer, that's what Honorable Bagbin said. How can he communicate effectively? How?
Yeah, but
how can he communicate effectively? I'm not saying that he's not known to NDC. And I don't even know him. I need to know all NDC members.
Hold on.
Bagbin is not against appointing a blind man to a salary appointment. He's not against it. When he comes to power, he will also appoint some of them, but not to the certain institutions or certain ministries which he shouldn't have done. That's all what he's saying. We are not saying that the disabled people shouldn't be recognized in the society. But the place that he was placed, the blind man was placed as the Minister for Social Affairs, was a wrong place. That is all what Honorable Bagbin is making a point. A lot of chiefs complained to the former president and to Honorable Bagbin as he was the leader of Parliament on NDC. He was the majority leader. And they complained to him that they are not satisfied with a blind man leading them.
And there's more coming up on Midday Live. Do stay with us. You're welcome back. The Minister of Finance, Ken Ofori-Atta, says government is focused on merging the Agricultural Development Bank and the National Investment Bank. At a forum organized by the Dankwa Institute on the current banking crisis, he explained the merger of the two banks will promote a congenial atmosphere for government to implement its flagship program, Planting for Food and Jobs.
Discussions on the 7 collapsed banks have dominated conversations in the country over the past weeks. Many Ghanaians have expressed disappointment over the developments, calling for the prosecution of shareholders and bank officials whose actions have led to the crisis, while others have also pointed accusing fingers at the central bank for reneging on its duties. The forum was on the theme, "The Banking Cleanup, Are Depositors Safe?" The Minister of Finance, Ken Ofori-Atta, was emphatic about the need to clean the sector and to ensure a safe financial system.
A banking license is actually, in a very crude way, a license to steal money if there's no regulation. Because essentially you have permission to take your money and my money, and if there's no regulation, you do what you want with it. You know? So when you open the barn, in which therefore there's so much forbearance, and people who receive the licenses, do not meet the fit and proper test, and they themselves are not bankers, you create a certain situation.
He indicated that government is still pursuing the agenda to merge ADB and NIB.
We're looking at NIB, ADB coming together. I think we are still on that course to do that, because at the core of that will then be creating, that capacity to look at this whole industrialization, 1D, 1F, in an organized and structured way with a strong institution that does that.
A legal practitioner, Ace Ankuma, argued that the banking crisis is down to plain stealing, and that attributing it to corporate governance failures is to water down the seriousness of the matter.
That the best way to rob a bank now is not to wear a mask and have a gun, but to own a bank. If you put your hand in it and put it in your pocket, you have been dishonest, you have appropriated, the thing is not yours, you are a thief. So why are we mollycoddling this issue? Why are we talking so nicely about it? Look, if we got that right, the capital adequacy and others might not even come up.
Other speakers tasked the regulator to enforce its laws.
Really, giving money to government will not weigh on your capital adequacy ratio, and that is a fact. So it is not so much about government, but it's about monies that have gone to the private sector in calculating your capital adequacy ratio. You are my friend.
U.S. President Donald Trump's trade war against China has moved up a gear as it brings in a 25% tax on a second wave of goods worth $16 billion. The move ratchets up the disputes, which began in July. The U.S. imports far more goods from China than it exports to it.
There are fears that more tariffs could cause further damage to companies and consumers. Goods affected this time include motorcycles and aerials. China immediately imposed retaliatory taxes on the same value of U.S. products. President Trump has been sounding off about unfair trade since even before he became president. During the 2016 election campaign, he said China engaged in the rape of the American economy. He ordered an investigation into Chinese trade policies in August 2017 and has been steadily imposing tariffs on Chinese goods since January this year. His assertion is that China and other countries are taking advantage of the U.S. companies by selling their goods too cheaply. In China, low production costs and a weak currency keep prices competitive. As a result, U.S. imports from China far exceed the amount of goods going in the other direction.
And that's it for business this afternoon. Let's take a short break. We'll be back. You're welcome back. Now, the president's nominee to the Supreme Court, Professor Ni Ashikote, has suggested a reduction in the jurisdiction of the Supreme Court. He argues that a wide jurisdiction is responsible for the delay in cases. Professor Kote was speaking at his vetting in Accra. I'm joined on the line by my colleague Evelyn Tima, who is at the vetting. Evelyn, thank you for joining us. So what has been the process of vetting these appointees? Hello, Evelyn, can you hear me? Evelyn, can you hear me?
It has to do with enforcement and interpretation of the Constitution. It supervises elections. It deals with criminal and civil cases and all that. And so this he called for the amendment to Article 131A of the Constitution to reduce the jurisdictions that the Supreme Court has, in order that there will be lots of the cases there will reduce so that it will be more effective, and then that it will the way it's supposed to be. There's also this issue that the number of judges appointed to the Supreme Court, and one of the MPs asked that if he thinks that the number of judges appointed to the Supreme Court should be reduced. And what she's saying is that currently we have 14 judges at the Supreme Court. And looking at the U.S., for instance, which is a developed nation, we have 9 judges. And so should we cut that number or cap the number? But he was saying that looking at the jurisdictions that the Supreme Court currently has, it would be very difficult for him to mention capping now. And so he is saying that if the number of cases to the Supreme Court are reduced, and then they can now talk about capping and the number. So currently we have 14 and 4 are going to be vetted, so meaning that the number is going to be increased. And talking about gay issue also, another MP asked him what his thoughts on gay issues, but he said that the case is before the Supreme Court, and so he's unable to talk on that matter. There were other issues concerning mining in forest reserves and talking about ministers being MPs as well, affecting parliamentary work and all that. And so he has been sharing his thoughts on some of these issues.
Thank you very much, Evelyn Tingma. Now let's look at some politics, because former President John Mahama has announced his comeback by presenting a letter of his intent to contest the NDC's presidential primaries. Let's now go over to the NDC headquarters where the presentation was made.
A short while ago, we presented a letter to the General Secretary of the National Democratic Congress on behalf of our former president, John Dramani Mahama. In that letter, he officially communicated his intention to contest the flag bearership of this great party. We, those of us who constitute this delegation today, are highly honored indeed to be part of this historic event. Historic because we sincerely believe that it is one huge step in the journey of the NDC to come back to power, to salvage the sinking ship of state, as we all know. We do hasten to add that we are only a small representative group of the widespread support behind John Mahama's comeback. The groundswell of support indeed enjoyed by JM, both within and outside the NDC has been occasioned by his unmatched support, record of performance in government, as compared to the abysmal performance of the Akufo-Addo government. This is one government that clearly does not care about the unprecedented levels of hardship they have brought to Ghanaians. This is indeed one government so full of arrogance, unbridled greed, and shameful nepotism, i.e., offering jobs, positions, favorite relatives, and friends. We have all come on board this mission to work for the re-election of JM, guided by lessons from our recent past. And going forward, we will constantly bear in mind those lessons, not only during the campaign for flag bearer of our great NDC, but also in the 2020 election campaign, and very hopefully in the government we shall form in January 2021. Now, it is our pleasure to formally present our letter to our General Secretary, who I have personally promoted to Field Marshal.
Field Marshal Mosquito.
Now let's move away from politics. The Upper East Regional Directorate of NADMO has assured residents of its preparedness to manage the Bagri Dam spillage scheduled for today. Now, the Upper East Regional Director of NADMO, Jerry Asemini, in an interview with Tanko Muhammad Rabiu, said his outfit is ready to contain the spill.
Water from the Bagri Dam in Burkina Faso flows downstream into the Black and White Volta in the Upper East, Upper West and Northern regions. Vast tracts of farmlands are inundated with flood water, which usually cause loss of lives and destruction of farmlands and property. There was no spillage last year due to low water level, though NADMO adequately prepared for that eventuality. The water level as at August 21 was 233.74 meters, 1.24 meters short of the maximum operating level of 235 meters.
The level is at 233.76, and normally they spill the dam when it is around 235. So we have barely 1 point something meters high to fill. And the rate of filling the dam is at 70% as at yesterday, that is the 20th of August.
Upper East Regional Director of NADMO, Jerry Asemini, said NADMO had stepped up its stakeholder involvement to prevent any calamity and asked residents to cooperate with the organization.
His Excellency's government is doing efforts to create a dam around the Palgu site for collection, and I think that has already been earmarked. It will also add up to the one village, one dam, and I know the government is committed into having a dam at the Palgu side, the river.
The spillage of the Bagri Dam is scheduled for Saturday. This is Midday Live on TV3. Stay tuned. Nana Kojo comes up with sports after the break.
Good afternoon. Welcome back to Midday Live here on TV3. My name is Anako Jafre with the sport update. And we begin from the fallout of Kwesi Appiah's squad to play Kenya for the 2019 Africa Cup of Nations qualifier. And we've been speaking to sports journalist Sadiq Adams, who has shared his thoughts on what he thinks this Stars team can achieve from here. He spoke to my colleague Thierry Nyan on Sports Unlimited, especially with the fact that the Ayu brothers and Asamoah Gyan are not part of the squad.
To even make
the starting lineup at his club for almost a year now, has started only 2 games, and you cannot keep a captain in a team, regardless of how influential he is, when he's not been able to, stay on the pitch and being fit for the team. And so I am not surprised, but I think that one thing I take from the squad is that it looks very fresh, with Harrison Affo, who is the most experienced player of the side. Quite refreshing also to hear that Kojo Asamoah is returning to the team after 4 years of staying out from Juve to Inter. And we all know that he's been picking up his pieces at Inter Milan since he signed on. He's looking a new player altogether. He's put the injuries behind him. And when these 2 players are in the Black Stars, talking about Harrison Affo and Kojo Asamoah, you can count on their experience and what they have garnered under their sleeves in the past tournaments. But there is also Kasim Nuhu, who to me has been one of the standout players of the Black Stars in Europe, signing for Hoffenheim, a big money move.
Meanwhile, a former head of Brazil's Football Association has been jailed for 4 years for corruption. 86-year-old Jose Maria Marin was one of 7 FIFA officials arrested at a hotel in Zurich in May 2015. He was convicted of accepting bribes from sports marketing companies in exchange for contracts to broadcast tournaments such as the Copa America. In addition, Marin was fined $1.2 million and ordered to forfeit $3.34 million. He was sentenced in a Brooklyn federal court and as the first official to be sentenced as part of an American investigation into corruption at FIFA. Marin's lawyer says he will appeal against the sentence. Our build-up to the Isaac Dugbe bout continues, and Isaac Dugbe is due to face the press later today in Arizona, USA, ahead of his world title defense against Hidonari Otake of Japan. Dugbe looked in great shape at his public workout on Wednesday and will use today's media encounter to further his claim as the star boy of the division. Editor of sports here at TV3, Michael Otieje, explains.
Well, essentially, Dugbe has been taking it very easy. He's been building up to the fight. There was a public sparring session for him in the gym on Wednesday. He is due to face the media today. And I imagine the message from Dugbe will be fairly simple. He said he is ready for Otake, that he understands and knows who the Japanese is, that he is prepared to use the Japanese to project his image as the biggest thing in the junior featherweight division. Otake himself has said that he thinks Dugbe rushes his opponents, but is also very convinced that at 37, this could be the final opportunity to become a world champion. Now, both boxers will have the chance to project what they want to do on Saturday, and Dugbe will consider this another opportunity to say to the American public that I am not just a good boxer, I can talk the talk required to make anybody a sellable material in this sport.
Meanwhile, after a long period of disinterest, boxing in Ghana is enjoying something of a resurgence, with Isaac Dugbe flying the country's flag high after winning the WBO title. He is on the bill this weekend to defend his title, but the buzz around the fight isn't as overwhelming as has always been the case with world title winners. Yafo Sulabi finds out what has accounted for Dugbe's relative unpopularity.
When the Ghana Boxing Authority President Peter Swenes marked this year as a huge one for boxing in Ghana, it was greeted with a bit of skepticism. Fast forward to August, the country has a world champion on the verge of a title defense, a high-flying Richard Comey, and the WBO African Super Welterweight title holder in Patrick Alote. Isaac Dugbe fights this week in a defense of a world title he won in April against Jesse Magdaleno, and there isn't the usual buzz around him like there have been for other boxers in the past. Sports journalist Godfred Akoto-Boafo has followed the boxer for quite some time and believes Dugbe's disconnect from Ghana's well-known boxing hubs, as well as a lack of television coverage for his bouts, have been the two major factors for his relative unfamiliarity among Ghanaians.
Primarily, if you're going to be a mainstream name in Ghanaian boxing, you have to come from the hub of Ghanaian boxing. Choko, Jamestown, Bukum, Mamprobi. Those are the hubs. These are the people who spend all their time talking about boxing. They are the ones who will follow you heaven and earth to make sure that you stay relevant in the game. He comes from the Volta region. He hasn't built a fan base in Bukum, Jamestown. People like to watch his fights. And I think that is what has kept his name on the low. He's a bit of a good boy as well, which is a positive. But in the realms of Ghanaian boxing, even if you like Azuma Nelson was quite outside of the ring, but he was a bit of a trash talker. And again, he's a Bukum kind of guy. He has managed his career in a way that has not opened him up too much.
Dogbe's progress has been an impressive one and a model for all young boxers. Beating Hidenori Otake will get him a step closer to his main goal of unifying the super featherweight region. His name in Ghana will also be strengthened incredibly if he wins this fight and the ones that will follow.
This is a winnable fight for him, and him to show his style. The biggest win for anybody is to make it to the US market, friendly style. There's a lot of action. He's not a very core. It gives him an advantage is to further expose him as market, which is where the money is. What this does again, him move a step up. Boxing very low down there at the moment, but he's past relevance. These are some of the. He clears this one and clears it. The door is just getting bigger for him.
And that's all the sports here. We wish Isaac Dugbe the best in that particular bout. Remember, the build-up continues here on TV3. Good afternoon.
Now let's take a look at Ghana's most beautiful things.
The show since its inception has witnessed 11 ladies being crowned as winners. This year's auditions began in Accra, continued in Tamale and then in Kumasi. 10 ladies who exhibited a great deal of eloquence impressed the judges that they are on top of their game with regards to knowledge about their respective regions, which led to their final selection. They were selected after weeks of audition and screening, which cut across the 10 regions of Ghana. Over the years, GMB has churned out industrious young women who have made positive impact in the society. Some past queens have also capitalized on the GMB platform to embark on projects that benefited many in the country. This year's contest is under the catchphrase, "This is the life," and it promises to entertain and educate viewers by dishing out what is anticipated to be exciting performances from the contestants weekly. The search for Zainab's successor just begun.
And we are live on DSTV channel 279 and also on our social media platforms at TV3 Ghana. That's on Instagram, on Twitter. And that'll be it for Midday Live on TV3. My name is Efuatiko. For more news, do go to 3news.com.